guys, welcome back to another episode of Handlebar ASMR. So this episode is going to continue on with some of the folklore and legends from other countries that you may or may have not heard of yet. This person you probably may have had a better chance to hear about because, kind of like Krampus, they're coming into their place with games like The Witcher and movies like Hellboy, and that is Baba Yaga. So I am going to tell you all about Baba Yaga today. So without further ado, let's begin. As ambiguous as she is hideous, Baba Yaga is an anomaly, both of maternal and Mother Nature figure, with an evil villain who enjoys eating those who fail to complete her tasks. Though the origins of her name are unclear, as her purpose tends to be, it is believed that Babu means akin to an old woman or grandmother, while Yaga has conflicting theories of meaning ranging from snake to wicked. Regardless, even Baba Yaga's name emphasizes the strangeness of her person, making her an interesting character to decipher. In Slavic myths, Baba Yaga is the wild woman or dark lady of magic, and in Russian folklore, there are many stories about her. These stories come from people who lived in the forests of northern Russia and Finland many years ago. They had statues named Yagas. Russian soldiers who came to the area called them golden babas. Often the statues had their own little huts built on tree stumps full of gifts. They were statues of a local goddess that people asked for advice. She also had the power to decipher and decide what happened to people, a bit like Baba Yaga. The word Baba can mean any woman old enough to marry. In the stories, however, Baba Yaga is often described as a frightening, wild old witch, which has a terrible appetite for eating people. The story of Baba Yaga and Vasalisa the Fair is one of the well-known tales that has things in common with other folk tales such as Cinderella. Why is Baba Yaga important in stories? Baba Yaga may stand for a person's fate. When someone enters the hut, they live or they die depending on what they say or do. Some also say that Baba Yaga stands for the dark side of wisdom, and the character of Vasalisa stands for the light side. However she came about, she is more than just an old, ugly witch, for she has power, and for that power, people have to respect her. In many ancient societies, older women were seen as the keepers of wisdom and tradition of the family, or the tribe. No longer having to care for their own children, they became a mother to the rest of the community. It was believed that these wise women understood the mysteries of both birth and death. They were healers, and they looked after the dying. Sometimes they were thought to have power of life and death itself. The word witch once meant being wise. Later, from the 12th century, when people began to believe in the use of magic or the power for evil, people began to fear and hate these wise women with their potions and advice. Many were put to death, and the picture of the wise woman or witch changed to become the frightening, ugly, evil old hag, casting wicked spells as in the stories of today. Baba Yaga is interesting because although she is described as a terrifying old witch, she is still wise and powerful. Wild and cruel sometimes, but also kind sometimes. Baba Yaga makes a link between the wise women of the early myths and the witches of the folk and fairy tales of today. What is Baba Yaga and her home like? Like most most witches, Baba Yaga can fly, but she does not use a broomstick. Instead, she sits in a giant mortar, a bowl for grinding food or medicine, with her knees almost touching her chin. She drives very fast across or above the forest floor and uses a pestle, the grinder, as a rudder, held in her right hand. She sweeps away her tracks with a broom made out of a silver birch held in her left hand. Wherever she appears, a wild wind begins to blow. The trees groan and the leaves whirl around in the air. Her home is a hut deep in the birch forest, in a place that is difficult to find unless a magic thread, feather, or doll shows the way. The hut has a life of its own. It stands on large chicken legs and can move about on its own. Its windows act as eyes, and the lock is full of teeth. A post fence surrounds the hut. The posts are made of human bones and topped with skulls whose blazing eye sockets light up the forest. Very often the hut is guarded by hungry dogs, evil geese, swans, or a black cat. The hut can spin around and moves through the forest. It makes blood-curdling screeches. Most of those who go in never come back out, unless Baba Yaga washes them, feeds them, and then sets them on a giant spatula before putting them in her oven. In many stories, the fate of those entering her hut is on their own hands. A guest may or may not fit into the oven, depending on how they sit on the spatula. Although she eats as much as 10 men, Baba Yaga is very skinny and bony, like a skeleton. Her nose is very long and hooked. Why do people in the stories go and seek this witch's help? That's the big question. It may seem strange that anyone would want to go look for Baba Yaga or enter her hut. However, she is wise and all-knowing, all-seeing, and tells the whole truth to those who are brave enough to ask. She rules over the elements: fire, air, earth, and water. Her faithful servants are the white horsemen, the red horsemen, and the black horsemen. She calls them my bright dawn, my red sun, and my dark midnight, because they control daybreak, sunrise, and nightfall. Some of her other servants are her soul friends. 3 bodiless pairs of hands would suddenly appear to carry out her wishes, and her herdsman, the sorcerer, Gorshek, the deathless. So, in the end, is this witch actually good or bad? Is she a benefactor or a villain? The characterization of Baba Yaga is very much uncertainty, it's just like the uncertainty where she came from, the uncertainty of her intentions and everything. She varies between acting as a benefactor and a villain, either helping the hero of the Slavic myth or hindering him or her, though it appears she never goes after anyone unprovoked. That is to say, without the person at least coming to the door of her hut. She appears to follow little or few morals. Nevertheless, whatever promise she makes to the hero after his completion of her tasks, she always keeps her promise. In my next episode, I'm going to read to you one of the most famous stories involving Baba Yaga, Vasalisa The Beautiful, and you can judge for yourself. So be sure to catch that episode. And with that, this episode is over. Thanks again for listening. I hope you come back, and I hope you listen to the next, which is a full-on fairy tale of Baba Yaga and Vasalisa the Fair, or Vasalisa the Beautiful. It's a really kind of cool Cinderella-like story, and it's actually neat to see how similar some of the stories of different cultures are, even though they may have never even touched each other. So, with that, I'd like to say thanks again for listening, and please join me for another episode of Handlebar ASMR. Thanks again.
Subscribe.
Subscribe.
Subscribe. Subscribe.